Joy from Joy Quilts. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the different ways to pinpoint a pattern on your quilt and drop your stitches where you want to do it. Basically there's two ways to do it. One is margins or markers, and the other one is boundaries. Okay, the main difference between the two is boundaries will morph and you can sort of put it where you want. You can do it on the screen or you can do it on the quilt. Markers can only be done on the quilt and it doesn't morph, it just goes where you put it. Okay, so I'm going to bring in a design. And another one. Second one, I'm going to turn it upside down, backwards. Just to get it in the right spot, I'm going to go 1 to 1 to make it bigger. Get it as close as I can to that size. Join the two together, group them, bring them back down to normal size, and take it over to Art and Stitch. So what we're going to do over in Art and Stitch is put them back to artwork, connect the stitches, or connect the objects, apply stitches, and then watch the quick redraw. Which I always do because it saves me importing a design that doesn't work. Alright, so there you have it. Now I can take it and save it as, I can just call it that number, I don't really care. Okay, main thing is that you get it for Bernina BQM, save it, and go back into Bernina. And there you have your little joined, two triangles joined together in a diamond shape. So now I've got to decide how I'm going to drop this onto the quilt. So let's try boundaries first. Boundaries on screen. I'm going to touch each spot. Okay, so just say that's where I'm going to be. This will really show you well how the morphing works, because look at this. It morphed it. It turned it sideways and it morphed it all over the place. So if I was going to use the boundaries, what I would do is, first I clear this, I would take this and rotate it 45 degrees like that, and then I would do the boundaries. For some reason this seems to work. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so preview that. Obviously I'm not that good on the screen, I'm better on the quilt. So there, now that is going to give me that design. Back this way on the angle. Okay, looks pretty bad. So let's get rid of that. Bring it in again. Do the same thing. Flip this guy upside down and backwards. Just go 1 to 1 just to bring them into alignment. Put them like that. So we want to make sure those tips touch. Then join it, group it. Okay, bring it back down to normal size. Now I can take that back over to Art and Stitch. And once again, back to artwork, connect the objects, apply stitches, and simulate sewing. What happened there? All right, so select it. Back to artwork. Sometimes I miss it with my finger and it doesn't do the step and it doesn't tell you, which is kind of annoying. Apply the stitches, and that is why I always do the quick redraw. Because if you miss something, it won't stitch an empty design. It has to have stitches. So it saves me importing this thing and then having it tell me it doesn't work. Okay, so there we have it again. File, nope, file, and save as. Once again, we're going to save it as a BQM because we're working on a Bernina. And away we go. Back we go again. Okay, so now this looks the same, but it is quite different. Now we're going to do markers. Okay, connect the markers. So now I have to do this on the machine. You can't do this on the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set one marker. You should go clockwise or counterclockwise, whichever works for you. This quilt has a bit of a diamond pattern, so I'm just using it to outline these. I'm not necessarily going to stitch that on this one. No, that should be it. So now I should be able to do this. Okay. So now that's brought it into where I want it to be. The nice thing about this way with the markers is even though it won't morph to fit the space, it actually will put those markers exactly on the quilt where you've put them in. As we all know, quilts are not exactly perfect every time. You do have to set it with every time you do this design because it is based on the physical location on the quilt. But this will stitch out in those four corners, and that's exactly what I want it to do. So that works perfectly. So that's the difference between boundaries and markers. Boundaries are great if you know exactly where you're going to go, and if you're doing it on a quilt, you can put those boundaries in and have it morph to that. It'll fill that extra space, whereas markers will just go between those 4 points you've put in. It's basically like slapping a square or a rectangle or something down on the quilt. You'll see exactly where it's going to go, where the morph to fit will fill in different spaces if it's not exactly square. So basically, that is it. Joy quilts for today.